Alright guys, it's been a while since we've done a set of notes this way. So let's go ahead and jump right into it. Our notes for today are going to be about photosynthesis. This is our first set of notes for our cycles of matter unit. Now this unit takes some of what we learned from the chemical reactions unit and it applies it to some of what you probably learned in 6th and 7th grade dealing with life science. All right, now, before we jump into this, there's one important thing that I want us to remember from chemical reactions, and that is something called the law of conservation of matter, which is also sometimes called the law of conservation of mass. Now, what this basically is the fact that whenever there is a chemical reaction, no new matter is created and no old matter is destroyed. So the atoms that are there before the reaction are the same atoms that are there after the reaction. No new ones appear out of nowhere, none of them are completely destroyed. They're the same ones, but they get rearranged. So the molecules that you start off with at the beginning of the reaction, it's the same atoms, they just move around and bond to different atoms that are already there. So there's no new atoms made, none are destroyed, it's the same ones, they're just rearranged. And this is important to remember because that's basically the whole idea of this unit, is how the law of conservation of matter, or the law of conservation of mass, applies to the ecosystem. So all of the world around us, not just us, but how we interact with other animals, plants, everything that's out in nature. So let's go ahead and get started. We should be doing this Cornell note style, as always. You should have your 2 columns. At the top of the page, you should have your title, which is photosynthesis. And the essential question for today is, what is photosynthesis and why is it important? After you write your essential question at the top of the page, go ahead and divide it into 2 columns. And hopefully by now you guys know the drill. The smaller column is there for questions, keywords, things like that, and the bigger column is for your notes. And then at the very end, yes, you have to do a summary. All right. So, photosynthesis is all about getting energy from the sun. So how do living things get energy from the sun? Well, pretty much every single living thing obtains energy either directly or indirectly from the energy of the sun. And the energy of the sun is captured during photosynthesis. Now, these next 2 words are a quick 7th grade review. All right. We have 2 types of organisms. We have autotrophs, which make their own food, usually through photosynthesis. There are some types of bacteria and stuff like that that do something similar, but without using sunlight, and they do what's called chemosynthesis. And it's basically photosynthesis, just without sunlight. They just use different elements and molecules that are around them in their environment where there isn't any sunlight. But anyways, autotrophs make their own food, and heterotrophs can't make their own food, so they have to eat other organisms to get energy. So that could be like a rabbit eating lettuce. That's how the rabbit is getting its food, by eating another organism, which is the lettuce, which is a plant. So it could be like that, or it could be like a lion eating an antelope. So those are the 2 types of organisms. So what happens during photosynthesis? Basically, plants and some other organisms like algae, they absorb energy from the sun, and they use that energy to basically convert carbon dioxide and water into sugars, which is where they get their energy, and also into oxygen, which is given off as a waste product. So this is kind of a long chemical reaction, and it happens in 2 stages. So in stage 1, so part 1 of the whole process of photosynthesis, sunlight is captured by the plant cells. And in plant cells, you have a special little organelle called a chloroplast. And the chloroplast is really where photosynthesis takes place. And there's a chemical in the chloroplast called chlorophyll. And the chlorophyll is really important because that's the thing that really catches and holds in the sunlight in order to do photosynthesis. So sunlight is captured. Water in the chloroplast is split into hydrogen and oxygen. Right? Now water comes from the roots of the plants, of course. All right. So it gets split into hydrogen and oxygen because water is H2O, which is hydrogen and oxygen. Now the oxygen gets given off as waste. So the plant gets rid of the oxygen and it goes into the air, and that's where we get our oxygen. So it's very useful to us because we get our oxygen from the plant giving it off during photosynthesis. So oxygen is given off, and then the hydrogen gets used in stage 2. So in stage 2, carbon dioxide comes into the plant through openings on the leaves. And carbon dioxide is, all around in the air, which actually gets released when we breathe or when we respirate, when we undergo cellular respiration, which we'll talk more about later this week. But either way, carbon dioxide is in the air, enters plants through the openings in the leaves, and it goes into the chloroplast where, again, photosynthesis is taking place. So the chloroplast uses the energy that was absorbed in stage 1, and it uses the hydrogen from stage 1, and it uses the carbon dioxide that it took in. So it uses energy, hydrogen, and carbon dioxide. And it goes through a whole process of several chemical reactions, basically moving all of these different molecules around until we get sugar in the form of glucose. And glucose is actually a molecule that is just made up of carbon, hydrogen, and oxygen. So that comes from the carbon dioxide, the carbon and oxygen in there. And then the hydrogen joins them as well. And they, all of the carbon dioxide molecules get broken down and the bonds get rearranged until you've got these bigger molecules made up of carbon, oxygen, and hydrogen, which is the glucose, which is the sugar. And that is used by cells to carry out basic cell functions. That's where they get the energy to do everything else they need to do to live. So I know I just talked a whole lot through that, and I'm hoping I didn't leave any of you too incredibly lost. But basically the important things to remember, I'm just going to go through in order kind of quickly. Sunlight gets captured by the chloroplast. Water in the chloroplast is split into hydrogen and oxygen. Oxygen gets given away, and we come back to the hydrogen in stage 2. Carbon dioxide comes in, goes into the chloroplast, and the cell uses energy, hydrogen, and carbon dioxide to make glucose, which is then used by the cell. The chemical formula. Yes, you need to write this down. It would also probably be a good idea to draw a diagram in your notes so that you can maybe hopefully remember it a little bit better what the process actually is. So the chemical formula for photosynthesis is in two places on the screen. That top picture going along the leaf, that is the chemical formula, and it's also right below that, right above where it says hint, this formula will be on your test. So yes, you need to know this. So basically, the simple way to show photosynthesis, simple way to explain it, is through the chemical formula, which shows us that basically for every glucose molecule, every sugar molecule that's made during photosynthesis, the plant uses 6 molecules of carbon dioxide and 6 molecules of H2O, water, and those are our 2 reactants. Those are the things that work together and get rearranged and changed during the chemical reaction. Now, over the arrow is like an equal sign, okay? And anything that is above that arrow is something that is directly used to make that reaction happen. So in this case, the light energy is being used to take that carbon dioxide and that water and turn it into glucose. But we've also got that waste product of oxygen from stage 1. So for every 6 carbon dioxide molecules and every 6 H2O molecules, water, we get 1 glucose molecule that gets used by the plant for energy, and we get 6 oxygen molecules that get given off. The plant doesn't need it, so it just gives it away. It gives it out into the atmosphere, and organisms that breathe the air, like us and animals, and we take that oxygen in when we breathe, and we need that, which we'll talk more about later this week when we go into cellular respiration. So that's it for your notes. It's actually not that long of a set of notes, but you do need to write a summary at the end. Your summary is, the idea behind it is for you to take the information, sum it up, put it in your own words, and that helps you to remember it a bit better. So take your time to write the summary. It should be a short paragraph, 3 to 5 sentences long. And that is it. Make sure you hang on to your notes. Do not lose them. Do not give them to me. I don't want them. I want you to have them. The notes are for you. So hang on to them. Put them in your binder or folder or someplace safe. You will be allowed to use them on the test when we get to it. So please hang on to them.